Sean Diddy Combs is a music mogul, producer, and entrepreneur who built a multi-million-dollar empire with Bad Boy Records, fashion, and spirits. He helped shape hip-hop and pop culture for decades. Combs is now in the middle of a federal trial in Manhattan that began on May 5th of this year. He faces charges of racketeering, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and transporting individuals for prostitution. Prosecutors have presented testimony from dozens of witnesses, including ex-girlfriends, Cassie Ventura, and a woman known only as Jane, as well as other employees who have painted a vivid picture of the freak-off or hotel night sessions where Combs allegedly orchestrated sexual encounters with escorts while exercising control and intimidation. Over 6 weeks, federal agents have introduced text messages, travel and hotel records, and explicit video evidence alongside millions of dollars in financial transfers. Sean Diddy Combs has pleaded not guilty and has maintained that all of these sexual encounters were consensual. This high-profile, high-stakes trial is now coming to an end, and we are live from New York with all the big moments and latest information from the Diddy sex trafficking trial. I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. Great to have you aboard as this big trial in New York begins to wrap up for rap mogul Sean Diddy Combs. Now, through the years here at Court TV, we've had our share of celebrities on trial in criminal cases, and we've had some celebrities who've been found not guilty. These are the two big ones, right? Michael Jackson, what a case, what a trial. The allegations of molestation, the victim's children, the court of public opinion, somewhat divided, but it was difficult to really gauge what that jury was hearing because there were no cameras permitted in that case. Then there was O.J. Simpson, a mountain of evidence, DNA evidence, but in the end, after 9 months, just a few hours, the jury found him not guilty as well. Well, we've got another enormous celebrity on trial. His name is Sean Combs, known as Puffy, known as Puff Daddy, known as Diddy, known as a defendant in a big case here. A lot is at stake. But don't miscalculate the level of his celebrity and just how huge he was and really in transforming pop culture. I mean, he was there at the forefront. He's a mogul in many respects. Really took hip-hop and put it into pop culture and made it a part that has lasted for years. It was him. There were others involved, but he was right there on the Mount Rushmore of those who really established hip-hop in our culture. Now, what he's facing includes RICO charges, and that's what makes this trial different. It's not just, okay, he did this, we're going to prove that. No, it's much larger than that, that he was running a criminal enterprise engaged in trafficking and all these other allegations. So he's facing a lot of time, but prosecutors have also put a huge burden on themselves to prove this. That it's not just a single incident. It's not just Cassie in the, by the elevator in the hotel. It's much larger than that. That he is the head of this criminal organization that was created so he can engage in all of these criminal activities. And it's interesting, right? Because this is a guy who built an empire that was about selling clothes, obviously selling music, selling liquor, everything else. That's huge. So the question for the jury and for me is, will there be any celebrity factor in this case at all? Excuse me. Does the fact that he is Diddy, that he is world famous, that he transformed our pop culture, does that at all impact the 12 who will be making the decision in this case? I think that's a huge X factor in all this. Well, I don't think we've seen a celebrity of this level on trial in a criminal case with this much at stake in quite some time. And in those cases, the celebrity factor played a role. You can't deny it. All right, let's bring in Court TV legal correspondent Kelly Craft, who is outside that federal courthouse in Manhattan. Kelly, great to see you tonight. Excuse me, I'm getting choked up here. Let's begin with the latest. What is the latest from New York tonight?
Well, big day here, Vinnie, in Lower Manhattan, because both sides rested their case. And when you were talking about that celebrity status, you could really feel that today inside the federal courthouse, because the judge had the colloquy with the defendant, Sean Diddy Combs, and the exchange was interesting to observe because Sean really spoke with the judge, was telling him that he, the judge, did an excellent job. The judge was asking him, are you going to be taking the stand? Are you going to be testifying? And Sean Diddy Combs leaned up, put his hands on defense counsel tables at one point, looked over at his counsel and said, I'm not going to do it, and I made this decision in conjunction with my lawyers, and leaned forward, Vinnie. So it was quite interesting to watch the exchange between him and the judge, basically just kind of a friendly exchange, that back and forth. So two things that were the big thing. The prosecution rested, then the defense counsel made a motion for a judgment of acquittal, Rule 29 motion. The judge is reserving a decision on that. Then defense counsel put on its case, a very short case, about 30 minutes. That's when they read some evidence into the record, talking about some text messages that Cassie Ventura and Jane had both sent Sean Combs, showing that they were willing participants, or according to the defense counsel, willing participants wanting to participate in these freak-offs. So what's going to take place tomorrow is we're going to have that charge conference, a day off for the jury. The attorneys are going to be making their way back to the courtroom for that charge conference, Vinnie, and that's going to begin at 12 p.m. Eastern.
Can you give me some idea what's happening at the courthouse? Federal courthouses are very secure, I know, in the way they are. I see the barriers behind you. During the day, what is happening there as Sean Diddy Combs is on trial, especially now as we're getting very close to the end?
You know, Vinnie, it's quite a scene because right now it's a little bit quiet, but during the day you have so many people that are congregated outside the federal courthouse. Some of them started chanting earlier because they know that this case is wrapping up. They're saying things like, you know, free puff, for instance. Security's extremely tight, and even in what they have, the overflow room for a lot of the public that come, if people make a move in there, or if they have something, a soda or something they're not supposed to have, it doesn't go over well, to say the least. Some man earlier today made his way into the federal courthouse, but several security had to stop him. Security men had to stop him because he was getting a little bit aggressive. But a lot of people want to get in and get a chance to see Sean Combs. So
am I correct in trying to analyze who is showing up and who wants a piece of this? In the Michael Jackson trial, obviously, the fans swarmed, and they were Michael Jackson fans. They were people who loved Michael Jackson. Now, I don't think Diddy has the same passion in the folks who have followed his career and loved him. Michael Jackson is the biggest star ever, right? But are the people who are showing up, are they fans of his? Is that what we have there? Are the people that want to see the spectacle of the court, of the trial itself? Or is it people who want to see Sean Diddy Combs and want to see him freed, want to see him walk out of that courthouse?
Vinnie, some definitely are fans. Absolutely. Others are people that just want to see him free. And when you talk with a lot of these people, they really feel that the government has not proven its case. Now, of course, these are people that are just around and what they've been hearing and reading. You know, they're not sitting inside that courtroom listening to all of the evidence, but they just feel that he's getting a bad rap here. What they've read and heard about this case, they are feeling that the women just were willing participants in this. And that's what we heard in openings from defense counsel, that the women were willing participants when defense counsel made its motion for a judgment of acquittal, Vinnie. They said the prosecution hasn't put forth any evidence of alleged crimes. There was no force. There was no coercion. Take a look at the text messages from Jane as well as Cassie. Cassie continually telling him, I love you. They said both women had a chance to leave this relationship and in fact did, and then both wanted to come back and did come back. So a lot of the people that you talk with that are present do feel that he's going to be found not guilty.
And it's interesting, you know, where we are, right? We had Me Too, and I almost feel like the public pendulum, which always swings too far one way, starts coming back the other way. And I feel like we're almost at a point where the Me Too movement had its peak, and I think, you know, it's starting to swing back a little bit, and we start to have a little more skepticism of people who are accusing others of acts of this nature, right? Looking at it. So we've got closing arguments coming up. What do we expect here in closing arguments? What are the parameters, and where do you think both sides are going to be going here?
Closing arguments will take place on Thursday, and then we're hearing, Vinnie, into Friday as well. And the prosecution has said that they don't expect the jurors to begin deliberating this case until Monday. So they have told the judge that they both expect to take 4 hours each. So that will take all of Thursday, and then at least most of Thursday, and maybe into Friday. And so it's going to be very long. Today, during that motion for a judgment of acquittal, Vinnie, the prosecution did not really put forth much of an argument. They said, we stand on our case, Judge, and if you have any questions, go ahead and ask us. So we didn't really get a glimpse inside of what their closing argument is going to be like, but we did from defense counsel, in which, again, they're saying the prosecution has not proven any of these charges. Another text message that they put into evidence today, the defense counsel, when they presented that very short case, is another text from Cassie Ventura just talking about how she's the luckiest woman in the world. I guarantee you they're going to talk about that. Defense counsel is going to talk about that in the closing argument, saying again how these women thought that they were the luckiest people in the world because they were a part of Sean Diddy Combs' life.
We're talking about some long closing arguments. That will be a long, long day for the jury. What, if anything, do we know about the jurors themselves?
Well, we've been watching them. We have been watching them. And there's been some fireworks in regard to the jurors. Vinnie, one has been dismissed because the judge felt that he was not being very forthcoming with his residency. And he made it very clear that you have to be a resident of New York, not New Jersey, to be serving on the jury. So definitely a good mix of jurors on the panel. Now, defense counsel has argued that the racial makeup is not obviously in its favor. And they said there's not enough diversity on the panel, but the judge has not agreed with any kind of argument in regard to that. We especially saw that in the beginning, the defense counsel really making an argument in that regard, but the judge was very satisfied with this jury, and again, like I said, got rid of one of the jurors.
All right, Kelly Craft, wow, it's happening. The trial is wrapping up. These RICO cases sometimes can go on month after month after month after month, and this one relatively quick for RICO. So we'll get ready for it. Thanks so much, Kelly Craft at the federal courthouse in New York. Joining us on the phone right now is Lauren Conlin, host of the Outlier podcast. She's also a reporter for Pop Crime TV. Lauren, great to speak with you. What are your thoughts about the celebrity factor, how it's playing in this case so far and inside this courtroom?
I don't think the celebrity factor is necessarily playing any part in this case, especially at this point in time. I think that every single day the jury is coming in. They are seeing Sean Combs look just like a quote-unquote normal person. They've taken away all of his fancy clothes, and he's rotating pretty much the same 3 or 4 sweaters. Additionally, the fact that he really hasn't had that many friends or notable friends inside the actual courtroom, I think that also says a lot. Of course, Kanye West was there, but the jury didn't see that Kanye West. He went into the overflow room for 20 minutes. I mean, at this point, I think it was pretty obvious at what a charmer Diddy was as well, especially the way that he spoke to the judge. I know that Kelly brought this up, but he did kind of interrupt the judge and say, Your Honor, I just think you're doing an excellent job, and thank you. So for me, that was a moment where I was like, wow, he really has this thing about him, this charm. And I'm not sure if that has anything to do with being a celebrity, but I can certainly see where he was able to charm all of these women and all of these people throughout his life.
Yeah, well, he's an interesting person, right? Because he's not just a celebrity, he's also an entrepreneur and someone who has run extremely successful businesses and has had many people working for him. And that's part of the nature of the charges is RICO, right? That he's got this organization. But he's used to calling the shots. I mean, to me, it's always fascinating when you have someone like Diddy who for years now gets whatever he wants, right? I want this, get me that. Get me this, give me that, right? But when you're a defendant in a criminal trial, you know you're not in charge. And it's interesting in that moment that there was that sort of deference to the judge.
Yeah, no, it was interesting. And we haven't really heard him speak very often, as you can imagine. There was another instance where he was asked about waiving his right to an appeal as it pertains to juror number 6 when they were fighting to keep, the defense was fighting to keep that juror on. The judge, you know, he looked at him and said, okay, Mr. Combs, will you waive your right to an appeal if this juror stays on and you are convicted? And Diddy actually waved his hands up in the air and said, I'm waiving. And that also elicited quite a few laughs. I did notice last week, and this is very random and maybe minuscule, but at the end of last week, I thought maybe he was getting a little bit nervous, as I noticed he asked to use the bathroom, I think, more than once, and that was kind of rare for him. But yeah, I mean, I think also a lot of us were kind of surprised when the judge asked him how he was doing today, and he said, I'm great, Your Honor. I mean, he must be feeling confident about this case. Clearly, the defense feels confident enough that they only put on a 30-minute case in chief, which, I mean, I guess I wasn't shocked, Vinnie, at this point, because their cross-examination with the summary witness was close to 5 hours. So they really hammered home a lot of points I think they wanted to get across. So I wasn't super surprised. But again, this whole thing, you are correct. Diddy is not in control, very different for him. However, I think he seems like from the outside, he's feeling pretty good right about now.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that perhaps last week he was starting to feel it a little bit because, you know, you're confident, you've got your bravado, you've got your lawyers speaking for you. But once you get past Thursday, nobody can say anything. It's up, except the jury. It's up to them to decide. 12 people you don't know, deciding what the rest of your life will be. You know, a life that he built for himself, right? He built this incredible empire himself, but he may never, ever be a free man again. And his life is literally in the hands of these jurors who he doesn't know. You know, all he knows about them is what they learned during jury selection and what he knows from watching them each and every day. So I've noticed many times that, you know, when you get to that point, that's when the nerves really set in, when you can't say anything more. How about for just the general scene there at the courthouse? How would you describe it day in and day out during the course of this trial?
Oh my gosh, I think everybody is so fatigued right now. I mean, I have been there since jury selection, and it's been the same group of press or members of the press in the courtroom every day. And you could just tell, I mean, inside the courtroom before anything even started, people were just acting a little silly, I guess. And I know it's very hot outside in New York. It's over 100 degrees. But in the courtroom this morning, Mark Agnifilo grabbed a microphone and made this Price is Right joke. And this is obviously before, you know, the judge was seated and everything. But again, I think at this point, everybody's really tired. I mean, the federal courthouse, as Kelly mentioned, it's really strict. You can't have anything in the courtroom. I mean, a water is pretty much it. If you're seen chewing gum, you have to leave. We pass notes in order to talk to each other or communicate with each other, because we're not allowed to speak. So I think that, you know, it is winding down, but as of Thursday, for closing statements, it's going to get crazy again. I am sure of it. And I was told by a pretty reliable source that all of Diddy's family members that were here initially, like his daughters and the mother of his children, I think Dana Tran, Sarah Chapman, they will also be in the courtroom. So I'm expecting it to be pretty quiet tomorrow for the jury charges and then get wild again for closing arguments.
Oh, absolutely. All right, Lauren Carlin's going to stick around. We've got a lot more to get to. We're going to talk, obviously, about the charges, the potential defenses, plus coming up next hour.
Tonight on Vinnie Politan Investigates, Suzanne Morphew disappeared on Mother's Day in 2020. Her body was found 3 years later, 40 miles from her home. And now, almost 2 years later, her husband Barry has once again been charged with her murder. Why now? Tonight, we investigate.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates. Tonight, 9/8 Central, only on Court TV.
The brutal murders of 4 University of Idaho students.
Detectives arrested Brian Kohlberger.
I pray that we have justice.
The Idaho College Student Murders Trial. Live coverage begins this August, only on Court TV.
So could you tell us, in that typical routine or pattern, how did it usually begin?
I would greet the person and I would say hello and just be really nice and sweet and kind of make small talk and...
Make small talk with who?
Whoever the entertainer was.
And when you say the entertainer, what are you referring to?
An escort.
And after you had small talk and greeted the entertainer, in a typical night following the pattern or routine that we've discussed, what would happen next?
They would be undressed, in shorts, and I would come out in a robe. Music would be playing, and I would start to already be high or have drugs in my system. And I would start dancing and slow dancing, just to kind of get my nerves out and kind of start the night. For energy of that and a robe, and things would escalate to foreplay between me and the man. Actually,
Throughout that, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Actually, that's... A few steps before that is typically the oral would start happening. When I would start dancing and I would put oil on the man and things like that.
You said the oil. What oil are you referring to?
Baby oil.
And why were you using baby oil?
Because that's what Sean really liked.
A lot of testimony about baby oil during the course of this trial, a lot. And right there you have one of the accusers in the case, known as Jane for purposes of the trial, describing the hotel night routine. So we've heard a couple different terms here, the hotel nights, and we've heard about the freak-offs. So let's take a look at both and kind of compare them a little bit. The freak-offs, you're talking about drugs are involved, sometimes would last days on end, like day after day after day. Male escorts were hired, would often occur at a private residence. Now, Combs partook in the actions alongside the male escorts during the freak-offs. And again, lots of baby oil, we know that. Now, the hotel nights, if you look at them on the other hand, yes, drugs involved, would usually last one long night, not day after day after day, but one very, very long night. Male escorts hired there as well, often would occur. Obviously, it's hotel nights at a hotel. Here's a little bit of a difference. Sean Combs allegedly would orchestrate the actions, but would not partake in the action until the escorts left, which is different than the freak-offs. And also lots of baby oil. So let's talk about some of these allegations and what this jury is listening to and what it all means. Here to weigh in, Lauren Conlon back with us, host of the Outlier podcast, also reporter for Pop Crime TV. Legal affairs journalist Megan Cuniff is with us as well, and former federal prosecutor Nima Rahmani, also president of the West Coast Trial Lawyers. Great to have everyone here. So Lauren, from what we've heard, is there how graphic, 0 to 10, how graphic is what this jury is hearing and what this jury is watching?
I mean, 10. I would say that I talked about the fatigue in the courtroom today. I think today I really hit my limit with these explicit text messages. I mean, the poor jury, I have to say, I mean, they watched 7 additional explicit clips today that were presumably from these sex tapes with Jane, Diddy, and various entertainers. And I mean, I think yesterday and then last week they watched between 15 and 25 clips. So they've seen it all. And I'm not even including pictures at this point. But listen, I am an adult. I can handle it, but this is to a degree that I have never heard before. This is some freaky stuff, and a lot of people are turning red. And listen, I'm not even talking about the jury. I'm talking about the people in the gallery. And it was so crazy because when Tenny Garagos was cross-examining Jane on the stand, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, your father is in the courtroom having to hear you say all of these words. That was just another layer of like, what is happening here?
Megan, what are your thoughts about all of this? Because this has really been sort of the theme of this entire trial. And it's a RICO case, I get it, but this is a different kind of RICO case.
It definitely is. And what it really stood out to me is that the defense really seems to be embracing these freak-off videos. In fact, I think the jury has actually seen more of the freak-off videos in cross-examination than they have in direct exam. So Diddy Garrigus has really embraced trying to show the jury that perhaps they're not getting the full picture. And she's even done some things like say, well, in direct you saw the end 30 seconds. Let's show you the minute and a half before that. So they're really trying to embrace the evidence and show that perhaps it's not as bad as prosecutors are trying to make it out to be.
Nima, how does a jury react to this? Do they get numb to it? And it's like, okay, we've seen all these videos, we've heard all this, we get it, we get it, we get it. And suddenly it doesn't have the same shock value or impact that it may have otherwise?
I don't think you can be numb to it because you're watching explicit videos of people having sex. And I think the video is so important because video doesn't lie. And obviously, you know, we don't know what the videos depict, but there's a reason the defense keeps using it during their cross-examination. And there's a reason they ask, hey, were you faking orgasms in those videos? I'm guessing that the victims look like they're enjoying the freak-offs in the video. And look, I believe the victims. I believe they were trafficked. But I think a lot of these videos, Vinny, they're good for the defense. Just like a lot of these messages and emails, they are good for the defense. I have serious concerns about sex trafficking. However, the prosecution, I think you need to put on some of the other victims. Obviously, victim 3, Gina, went sideways. She's not there. But some of these 100+ people who have raised civil complaints that don't have this long-term relationship with Sean Diddy Combs, where they don't have these emails and text messages where they say they want to get kinky, they want to get freaky, they're communicating directly with the sex workers. The prosecution really ended with a whimper here at the end of its case in chief. So I think sex trafficking is pretty shaky right now.
Lauren, going into this trial, the other big issue and the public curiosity was, oh, these videos are coming out. Who are we going to see in the videos? So who are we seeing in the video? There aren't other celebrities in these videos, are there?
Listen, I have no idea. Clearly we can't see them, but I think something that I'm hearing from the public is this trial is nothing like I thought it would be. I mean, people are saying, where are the minors? Where are the allegations of the GHB and the drugs in the baby oil? I mean, last week when we heard from Brendan Paul, who was dubbed Diddy's quote unquote drug mule by the media when he was arrested last March, this kid gets on the stand. We find out he was cleaning Diddy's room. He wasn't asked to take any drugs anywhere. He saw 0.7 grams of cocaine. He scooped it up, put it in his bag. He meant to throw it away. He didn't, and he was arrested. And not only that, this kid was an honor roll student, played D1 basketball at Syracuse, and again, the media is calling him this drug mule. So I think this case and this trial was sensationalized from the very beginning, that people are kind of sitting here like, oh, wait, the government's case isn't exactly what I thought it would be.
Yeah, Megan, from your perspective, you're nodding your head. You agree?
Yeah. Definitely, especially the other bad acts witnesses. That was such a big deal in pretrial litigation, and we've seen that play such a role in other sex crimes prosecutions like Harvey Weinstein, where it's people who aren't actually charged as victims in the indictment, but still accuse the defendant of sexual assault. And we were supposed to see that in Diddy's trial. Prosecutors had 4 or 5 victims that they wanted to put forth, and the judge actually limited it to 1, but we didn't even hear from that one person. So we've lost a charged victim and then also an other bad acts witness. So it just seems like the case has not really panned out like some people thought it would at all.
So Nima, you're a former federal prosecutor. The way the feds generally operate is they don't want to lose a case. They don't bring a case unless they believe they have the overwhelming evidence. The joke I used to make was, because I was a lowly, local prosecutor, where, a crime happens, we figure out who did it. We don't have a videotape, 7 cooperating witnesses, and a confession. And so what do you think's going on here? Did they bite off more than they could chew with the RICO charges and everything else that's going on here? Or do you think they're still in that sort of safe ground where the feds often operate, where they rarely lose at trial?
I got to agree with Lauren and Megan. I am underwhelmed. As far as ground, I think they're on shaky ground, Vinny, and this is why. Look, I've prosecuted drug cartels, right? You lean on everyone as a federal prosecutor. I would have Christina Horam as an indicted co-conspirator if she's not testifying. KK would be pressured. D-Rock, the security guard, same thing. They're all liable for drug and sex trafficking potentially, but they got a free pass. And instead, we're relying on the personal assistance. When you have people high up in any organization, could be a criminal enterprise that is exclusively committing crimes, or it could be Bad Boy Records, whose one of its purposes is to commit sex, drug trafficking, extortion, bribery, arson, everything that we discussed. You have to lean on the other people in the organization. You pressure them, you cooperate them, otherwise you charge them. That's the power you have as a federal prosecutor. That's the whole reason to even charge RICO, Vinny, because you bring a lot of people and a lot of evidence into the case. And the prosecution missed a very good opportunity. Hopefully it doesn't matter and the result's going to be the same. But if not, the fact that they kept this case so clean and so narrow and didn't bring all these other individuals in, it may end up coming to bite them at the end.
Let me ask you, Lauren, you've been inside that courtroom, right? So not from a legal perspective, not legal analysis about the case, the charge, just like, okay, you've heard all this stuff about Diddy, right? You've heard all these people talk about it. What do you think of Diddy? Like, what do you think of Diddy right now? Right? I think that's a fair question, because the jury's going to have the same thing. They're in the same place you are. Like, what do you think of this guy?
Yeah, sure, but I would prefer to leave my personal feelings out of this, I guess, because,
So what's the impression? What's the impression that's being painted of Diddy in the courtroom? That he is evil, that he's kinky, that what is the overall, what is the word you would use to describe it?
At this point, I think he is a drug addict and a sex addict, hands down. I think that he is capable of some diabolical stuff. However, I do sit there at times, Vinny, and I think to myself, okay, is promised quality time with Jane, is that fraud? Is that fraud to that points to commercial sex trafficking? And that's when I kind of have to really think about some of these charges. And so it's really odd, because I don't want to, sit there and think that I'm helping the guy out, because we have heard some pretty unspeakable and diabolical things here. But again, some of it just seems strange. You've got assistants on the stand being like, he was mean to me, he got in my face. And you're just like, okay, how is that RICO? Again, I know Nima's probably gonna get mad at me for that, because we've also had discussions here. I know that there's more to it, but again, you guys know I am not a lawyer. I'm just a lay, I'm an observer, but I do have some issues with some of the charges. Not all.
That's fascinating. It's fascinating. Drug addict, sex addict, that to me, that paints a picture. Okay, great news. All our guests are staying with us. When we come back, we're going to ask this question. Did Diddy's accusers give consent?
When Sean first proposed freak-offs, what was your reaction?
Oh, I just remember, my stomach falling to my butt. Just the nervousness and the confusion in that moment. I think I was 22 at the time. I had just turned 22. I didn't have a concept of how that would be a turn-on, but I also felt a sense of responsibility with him sharing something, like that with me. So, yeah, I was confused, nervous, but also loved him very much and wanted to make him happy, so, yeah.
Now, at first, after that first night in May of 2021, about how long after that did Sean suggest you do that again?
I would say probably pretty quickly after.
Was it the next time you saw him?
Yes.
And how did you react when Sean suggested doing it again?
I was agreeable.
And why were you agreeable?
Because my partner wanted that, and I just wanted to make him really happy, and I knew it turned him on, and I just wanted to satisfy my partner.
Fascinating, right? A big part of this case is consent. It's a significant issue, maybe the most important issue with the accusers in the case. Are they consenting to what is happening? That's what the defense is. Let's bring back in our guests. Still with me, Lauren Conlon, Megan Cuniff, and Nima Rahmani. Megan, what are your to me, this is like the issue, right? And I don't know if it's crystal clear from what I've been hearing, but obviously I'm not inside the courtroom.
Yes, exactly. We've really talked about how the defense is really trying to hit home that they were willing participants in this, that while there may have been arguments and resistance here and there was also eager participation in even them arranging these. And one thing Combs's lawyer emphasized today in argument outside the jury was that it's not about the women's state of mind, it's about Combs's state of mind as regards to the trafficking. What did he think their participation was? Was he knowingly defrauding them, forcing them into participating in this? So I think that the defense feels confident that they put forth enough maybe mitigating evidence in a way to some of the bad communications that they've had. But I also think prosecutors think that the facts in this just speak for themselves. And if there's been overall resistance to this, their bases might be covered.
Nima, if the issue of consent is sort of in the gray area, that, to me, that is ripe for reasonable doubt, because that's one of the elements, right? You've got to prove that something else is going on here, that they're not voluntarily doing all of this, that there's something else driving it, something criminal. But if there's anything like that that's sort of growing in terms of, well, maybe there is some consent here, then that's a major problem.
No question, Vinny. That's why I'm so concerned about the sex trafficking counts, and I want the prosecution to lean all into RICO. I mean, let's go through the three victims. Cassie, her emails, her text messages, they were terrible for the prosecution. There's not one where she said she doesn't want to freak off. In fact, she says how much she loves it and can't wait and wishes to participate in it. And she's actively communicating with the sex workers, right? So she's not a good witness, at least when it comes to the consent issue. Now, before everyone sends me the nasty messages, I understand the psychology of abuse. I agree with expert witness Don Hughes, but this is a problem for the prosecution. Then you go into Mia, right? She was obviously differently situated, much more traditional sexual assault case, but she didn't tell law enforcement. They got the stipulation in today that she gave wildly inconsistent statements. So that stipulation is going back into the jury deliberation room. So she has credibility issues. Then you get to Jane. And I think the defense really painted a picture, even though Jane did say in writing that there were instances where she didn't want to participate in the hotel nights. It seemed like it was more of a transactional relationship. She's getting her rent paid. She's getting jewelry. She's even involved with the financial payments, Cash App, Zelle, to the entertainers. So all three of the victims present very serious credibility in other issues related to consent. I believe them. I believe there were sex trafficked, but it's going to be very hard to get 12 out of 12 jurors to unanimously agree on sex trafficking and that this was not consensual beyond a reasonable doubt, Vinny.
Yeah, I mean, the charges are extremely serious. You say those words, sex trafficking, everyone, you know, is like, yeah, this is extremely important. This is extremely serious. So when you look at the case, Lauren, and one of the comparisons we made going into all this was the R. Kelly case, but it just seems the relationship of R. Kelly with his accusers much different than what we're seeing in this case.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree. And I fully agree with Megan. It was brought up today, and I thought it was so interesting because I had thought about this previously. You know, when Diddy is doing this with Cassie and with Jane and with his significant others or the women that he's dating, you know, in 2009, 2012, 2020, did he have the mens rea? Did he have the guilty mind that he was committing these crimes, that he was committing sex trafficking and trafficking his girlfriends. I don't necessarily think a jury is going to believe that he did, especially after seeing the text messages, especially after seeing how, the various times that Cassie or Jane would say, okay, look, I need a break from being with other men. I only want to be with you. That break would happen. But then a week later, 2 weeks later, whatever it was, they would fall back into this cycle and they continued to stay with him for years after. So I think that is such a big question. And I feel like, the case in general, I think, Megan, you were there for this today, but when Maureen Comey did the redirect and it was pretty much her last chance here, I saw her get way more aggressive than I have ever seen before. And this is my opinion, but she got up there and I felt like she knew that this wouldn't fly, but she needed the jury to hear it after Tenny Garagos' 5-hour cross. She said, we just looked at financial records for Sean Combs. Did they reflect that Sean Combs paid to transport Cabral Williams across state lines for sex? Or like it was very aggressive, and it was like objection. And then the judge is like, okay, let's have a sidebar. They were grasping. And to me, or to me, it felt like they were grasping. And again, I know that Maureen Comey knew that wasn't gonna fly, but she was like, they have to hear it. They have to hear it, and that's that.
A big moment. Lauren Conlon, Megan Cuniff, Nima Romani, thank you all so much. Obviously, we'll be talking again about this as the case wraps up this week. When we come back, I will reveal something else you need to know tonight, plus coming up next hour.
Tonight on Vinnie Politan investigates the mysterious disappearance and death of wife and mother Suzanne Morphew. Her husband Barry has been charged with her murder. Is her death related to text messages she was sending to her lover? Tonight, we investigate.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan investigates. Coming up next, only on Court TV.
A high school party ending in a fatal stabbing.
It was very hectic. People started yelling, screaming.
But what led to this tragedy in an affluent community?
The Preppy Party Murder Trial. Live coverage weekdays, 8/7 Central on Court TV.
Time to reveal something else you need to know tonight. Let's take a look at the big board, and she was innocent. Those are the words of the foreman in Karen Reed's retrial, who went public without being named on NBC's Today Show this morning, saying he thought she was innocent from the start. Take a listen.
In your opinion, is Karen Reed innocent? She didn't do this? Or is it just that the prosecutors did not put on enough evidence to convict?
Karen Reed is innocent, and she didn't do this crime. No one could prove that she did this crime, so I looked at her from day one as an innocent woman.
All right, take a look at your screens, folks. We have a missing child who needs your help tonight. This is Isabella Thomas, missing since June 19th, out of New Rochelle, New York, just 13 years old. Please take a look at her face. If you see Isabella, make a call, make a difference, 911, 1-800-THE-LOST, or you can call the City of New Rochelle Police Department in New York. That number's on our screen. Let's see if we can get Isabella to a safe place tonight. Don't go anywhere. We have another hour of live true crime. Vinnie Politan Investigates is next. In the meantime, please don't forget to hug the kids.